Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the news brief. I would like to apologize right away for not having one last Friday, but that's because, well, we decided to talk about the mineral deal, and then we all know where that went. So that's what we're going to be partially talking about today. And of course, we're going to be discussing it together in the comments, so I don't have to suffer alone, and you don't have to suffer alone. And then leave your questions, suggestions, thoughts, constructive criticism, anything that comes to mind down below, because I read all of it, and I really love your feedback. Let's get it. So at this point, I'm sure everybody, and I mean everybody, has seen the Trump-Zelensky Vance blowout in the Oval Office. If you haven't, here are some clips.
Tonight, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky leaving the White House early and empty-handed after a stunning shouting match in the Oval Office.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
Barely an hour before, the visit had started with a cordial handshake, a joke, and kind words.
It's an honor to have President Zelensky of Ukraine, and we've been working very hard, very close.
Both leaders had planned to sign a deal giving the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals, designed to pay back the U.S. for billions of dollars in aid, seen as a crucial step for a possible broader peace deal between Ukraine and Russia.
I think that President Trump on our side.
But Zelensky also disagreed with Trump, arguing the U.S. must offer security guarantees in any ceasefire deal.
That's why we will never accept just ceasefire. It will not work without security guarantees.
Soon, the meeting took a sharp turn when Vice President Vance mentioned talks with Russian President Putin.
The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy.
That word, diplomacy, prompted Zelensky to interject that Putin had broken a ceasefire before.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
The exchange devolved quickly.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you
that wasn't with me. Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. You got to be more thankful. Because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
The argument that would typically unfold behind closed doors, escalating in front of cameras. This was the reaction from Ukraine's ambassador.
The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that.
Minutes later, a White House official tells NBC News that Zelensky was asked to leave. A private lunch and joint press conference canceled. The president posting Zelensky disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office.
And I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. That was not a man that wanted to make peace.
Late today, Zelensky responding.
I'm very thankful to Americans for all your support. You did a lot. I'm thankful to President Trump and to Congress bipartisan support.
Here in Washington, Republicans are saying the president stood up for America, while Democrats are calling this an utter embarrassment. Tonight, it's not at all clear when or even if Trump and Zelensky will speak again. Lester?
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. Now to Richard Engel, who has reaction to the stunning moment in Ukraine and Europe. Richard, what are you hearing there?
Well, Lester, the world just watched as President Trump humiliated Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House. Zelensky was there to sign this mineral agreement. He was going there after having been insulted by President Trump for a week. Nonetheless, he went there, he was ready to sign, and things quickly devolved. The White House saying it was because of Zelensky's attitude. He's getting some support from Europe. Russia is celebrating with a senior official saying that finally Zelensky got a slapdown. Zelensky tonight in an interview says he still wants those security deals, security guarantees from Washington. President Trump has made it clear he does not want to give them, that asking them is overplaying his hand. Lester?
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
I'm sure you've seen many an analysis about what happened. You've seen many people take sides. You've seen, people trashing Zelensky, mostly on the far right spectrum. You've seen people mostly around the world trashing Trump and Vance for what had happened. But the bottom line here is that an American president and an American vice president basically went all out on an ally trying to pester him like he was a little kid coming to the Oval Office, not their equal. And that looks horrendous in America. But what that also signifies is that Trump and his administration has fully fallen into Russia's hands, and we see that from a plethora of things that he has said in the past couple of days since that's happened. And I'm going to read you some of these things, and then I'm going to analyze not exactly what happened in the White House, but what's going to happen next, because we can expect a lot of media pressure on Ukraine in the next couple of weeks, maybe months, and a lot of pressure from the US to basically capitulate. And we as Ukrainians can't give in to this pressure. And we should do what Zelensky did, and we should stand up for ourselves. And you, if you care about Ukraine, more than ever right now, should stand up for us. Donald Trump on Truth Social has been saying a lot of horrendous things, but also MAGA resources on Truth Social and Twitter have been saying this. They've posted a video of someone named Alexander Dubinsky, and here is their comment. Zelensky's overreach threatens Ukraine's future, Alexander Dubinsky warns. Alexander Dubinsky stared out the window of his Kyiv apartment, reflecting on the 15 months since President Zelensky had him locked away in a pretrial detention center. This is an incredibly uncredible person who has been tied to a lot of corruption schemes and also treason, aka giving information to Russia against Ukraine and aiding and abetting their invasion. And these are the characters that MAGA is using today to justify their thoughts on Zelensky. Also, of course, Donald Trump has been going full force on his own commentary and what had happened, and that is, now Zelensky will have no choice but to back down and accept Trump's terms. But here's the genius part. Trump is actually protecting Ukraine without dragging the U.S. into war. By negotiating a mineral deal, Trump ensures that Americans will be involved in Ukraine's mining industry. This prevents Russia from launching an invasion because attacking Ukraine would mean endangering American lives, something that would force the U.S. to respond. Trump played both sides like a master chess player. In the end, Zelensky will have no choice but to concede, because without U.S. support, Ukraine cannot win a prolonged war against Russia. And once the U.S. companies have mining operations in Ukraine, Putin will be unable to attack without triggering massive international consequences. Don't underestimate Donald Trump in this game of chess. He's 10 moves ahead of everyone. If you're wondering why Donald Trump on his own social media is writing about himself in the third person, it's because he isn't. Allegedly, he actually copied someone else's comment on a TikTok or a Facebook post about him and just copy-pasted it word for word. I mean, no original thought there. Donald Trump is not playing a game of chess 10 steps ahead. Donald Trump is basically trying not to piss off Russia and is trying to make Russia happy while also making profit on Ukraine. And everything that has been happening, whether you think it was staged or not staged, whether you think, Trump is in his right to say things that he did in the Oval Office, was really just a badgering, and it was not okay. First, Vance obviously said that Zelensky never said thank you for everything the U.S. has done, and I have a compilation of at least 94 times that Zelensky has thanked our Western partners for everything they have done.
Я вдячний Сполученим Штатам за схвалення нового пакету підтримки України. Я вдячний народу Америки, всім нашим друзям в Конгресі, адміністрації за цю підтримку.
I just want to thank for your support and support, first of all, for people.
Ми поважаємо все, що Сполучені Штати Америки роблять для України. Хочемо подякувати за підтримку двопалатну, двопартійну, підтримку суспільства Сполучених Штатів Американців.
Thank you for your support, every American citizen. Please know that you support not just a country or its leader, you support millions of people who, like you, cherish freedom. Special thanks to the many American veterans who have volunteered to fight in Ukraine, and to the American people for the amazing support you have given Ukraine. All my appreciations. From my heart, from the heart of Ukrainians. I want to thank you, all of you. I thank every American family. Thanks to President Biden, and I thank you all.
Thank you very much to you, to Congress, my partisan support, to the White House, to President.
We, Ukrainians, will always be grateful to the U.S. and every American for an extraordinary support. And there is not a soul in Ukraine that does not feel gratitude to you, America. Thanks to Secretary Austin, Chairman Brown, Secretary Del Toro, and Secretary Wormuth for all your invaluable support to the Ukrainian Navy and Army. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here and personally thank you and tell you how what we've achieved together, defending life and freedom. Thank you very much. Mr. President, thank you very much for your supporting us. We're very thankful for President, his administration, Congress, bipartisan, of course, support. Я вдячний кожному в Сполучених Штатах.
Дякую особисто спікеру Майку Джонсону, усім американським серцям.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. First of all, thank you so much for your significant support, you, your administration. We are very thankful from all Ukrainians to your military support, financial support, humanitarian one. Mr. President, thank you, your team. I would also like to thank the United States Congress for their support, both parties, both chambers. Thank you, and thanks to every American heart that does not betray freedom and supports us.
Дякую тобі, Америка.
Mr. McConnell, I'm grateful for your firmness in defending freedom and for your visits to Ukraine to see how important it is to win now. I'm grateful to all Americans for their vital and your strong support. I thanked America, all our friends in America and all Americans who support Ukraine, our people, our freedom, our independence in this terrible war started by Russia. Mr. President, thank you for your strong support for the decision that are helping us protect Ukrainians, our whole. We deeply appreciate that Ukraine and America have stood side by side from the very first moments of this terrible Russian invasion. And we are grateful to America for supporting Ukraine.
Я дякую всім
американцям.
За це вдячний пану секретарю і вдячний президенту Трампу.
Я вдячний президенту за щирий інтерес до наших спільних можливостей, до того, як ми можемо разом наблизити справжній мир. Дякую усім в Америці за двопартійну підтримку.
Also, it started with Trump and Vance spewing direct misinformation and disinformation. And of course, you can say that, well, he should have just done what everybody else does. They baited Keir Starmer too, and Keir Starmer didn't fall for it. So you're going to criticize someone for not letting Trump and Vance say direct misinformation and falling for the bait instead of criticizing your government for arranging disinformation bait? I think the answer here is clear. We've seen Donald Trump in the Oval Office call Biden an idiot, his predecessor. So even if we take Ukraine out of the equation, what happened in the Oval Office was not diplomatic, it was not political, it was unacceptable. And that triggered a huge wave of American support all over social media of people saying, I support Ukraine. And I mean, when I say that, I talk about random Americans, not Americans that normally talk about politics, not Americans that normally care about politics, just random people, fashion bloggers, just people with TikTok pages or Instagram pages. Lots of people were asking, which actually gave me an understanding of how little people know about what's been happening in Ukraine. People have been asking for Ukraine to create a direct GoFundMe for weapons or a direct GoFundMe to fund our country. So if you're one of those people who doesn't know how to donate to Ukraine but wants to, since the events of the Oval Office, we have Serhiy Prytula Foundation, we have Come Back and Alive Foundation, and of course we also have the government platform u24.gov, where you can donate to various different fields like reconstruction, like humanitarian aid, and of course military aid. You can also donate for the functioning of the platform, and U24 can be followed on all social media, where you can get news directly from very hardworking people who, some of them are friends of mine, who are providing you with some of the best information available out there because they have the best resources in this country. With that said, after what had happened, Trump thinks that he's on a high horse and he can pressure Ukraine into accepting everything that he wants, aka, letting Russia win. But Ukraine is not going to fall down. And in reality, what Trump did with that is he showed all of his allies that they can trust him. So for the first time in modern history, a security conference took place in London between all of the NATO allies without the US, because that security conference was an emergency meeting about what to do about the US. Of course, most of world leaders had already stepped out in support of Ukraine, saying that no one's going to abandon Ukraine. Canada stepped out in support. France did. Also, so did the UK. But of course, it's going to take something drastic for Europe to wake up. Can Europe currently substitute for all of the US production? At this stage, no. But does that mean that Ukraine has to capitulate and give in to Russia? No. Does that mean that Ukraine has to accept Trump's terms? Also no. What that means is, up until we can figure out our own production lines and until we can figure out how to ramp it up in Europe, we're going to have to do a lot more with a lot less. And hey, when our alternative is to live in Russian occupation or giving Russia a breather and letting them attack again while we are not prepared, we're going to fight. And that's the unfortunate scenario. Now, I want to talk a little more about what's going to start happening within the media space. We are already seeing Fox News hosts doing debates on how, they're seemingly inviting two sides, one that says that Russia had no reason to invade because of NATO, and NATO is not the reason. And then the other side, which is presented to be more logical, is the side that shows why Russia invaded and how it is reasonable for Russia to invade because of NATO expansion. And actually, a personal acquaintance of mine, Peter Dickinson, was on Fox News as one of the sides that was arguing that, of course, Russia is the aggressor in Russia and there is no justification to it. And here is a clip.
The editor of the Atlantic Council's Ukraine Alert Service, Peter Dickinson. Peter, I'd love to start with you because I believe that you are most likely to have some disagreement with perhaps the way I laid that history out or where we sit here today. Did you hear anything you just heard from me? in that history that you disagree with between Ukraine and Russia?
I will. Good to join you. Well, I think that we need to be very specific when we talk about NATO enlargement. Putin, of course, doesn't like NATO enlargement. There's no question about that. His objections are entirely genuine. But we need to discuss whether they are legitimate in the sense of whether Russia is genuinely threatened by NATO and whether Russia even itself feels it's threatened. Now, I would point specifically to the enlargement most recent in Finland. Now, Finland and Russia have a border of around 1,300 kilometers. When Finland joined NATO in 2023, that effectively doubled Russia's border with NATO. And Russia's response, Putin's personal response, was to say, I don't mind. I've got no problem with this.
What this does is it's presented as a debate on equal sides, but in reality, of course, the host and the other person are trying to feed it to you that Ukraine is in the wrong. And we're going to be seeing a lot more media campaigns like that. We're going to be seeing a lot more Russian bots. And we are already seeing that Russia, under Trump administration, is being normalized again. Not only is Trump stopping all military aid to Ukraine until Zelensky is ready for peace, aka ready to just submit and accept Trump's terms, which are terrible for Ukraine, and mean capitulation to Russia, we're seeing the Oscars, where Anora, a film about Russian oligarchs, has won 4 Oscars. Why is that a problem? Well, I mean, outside of romanticization of Russian oligarchs that I guess most people won't agree with me about, the 2 actors that are in Anora are directly sponsored by a Russian state. They support the invasion. They pay their taxes into Russia, which means that, you know, we as Americans pay their salaries, and then they pay taxes from those salaries to Russia to fund the war in Ukraine. Both of these actors starred in Russian production series that glorified and justified the Russian invasion of Crimea.
You're Borisov, where you at? There he is. Wasn't he amazing in Anora? You have a bright future. You're in the right place. Am I correct? Yes.
Did Robert Downey Jr. know that Yura Borisov actively supports Russia's war against Ukraine? He joins Kremlin initiatives, backs attempted annexation of Crimea, and starred in a propaganda movie AK-47 on the temporarily occupied peninsula.
You're Borisov.
In other words, if this was 1940, I want to paint you a picture. Imagine that it's not 2025, it's 1940. The movie is not Anora, it's something else. The actors in this movie are not Russian, they're German. And they are 2 German actors who priorly starred in Nazi films about the justification and glorification of the actions of the Nazis. They also attended many, many, many Nazi state events, and they pay their taxes to Nazi Germany. Do you think that film would be glorified in the United States and allowed to be considered for Oscars? I don't think it would be, and it shouldn't be, because that's not okay. And the issue is that the director and everybody, when they were casting these actors, they have seen their prior history of where these actors have starred in which movies. So they consciously made that decision. And now they're being celebrated and cheered on all over the world because the movie won 4 Oscars. It's a record. It's amazing in one night, right? And so now this movie is on a pedestal, and it's celebrated, it's cheered on, and the people in it are too. And I realized how big of a problem this is and how much of a silent cultural war from Russia this is and normalization of Russians when I actually saw a friend of mine yesterday post on his story, like, you know, some emojis with heart eyes about Anora. And then I started to have a heated conversation with him because it was 2 a.m. and I was, you know, I wasn't ready for a constructive dialogue about why this is not okay. And he didn't know any of this. He didn't know that the actors supported the invasion of Ukraine. And had he known that, he would not have supported the movie. He would not have supported these actors, and he would not be equally as okay with it being winning the Oscars or being nominated at all. But this information is not there unless you go and research it. So this is how we're normalizing Russia. And unless we do a complete cultural boycott on Russia and everything Russian, you're going to continue falling for Russian disinformation and for what they want you to think. And now, in America, we also have an administration that is very clearly pro-Russian and that very clearly spreads Russian narratives. One of them being that, Zelensky is not ready for peace and that he hates Putin and that, he's so bad for doing that. Meanwhile, thousands of our people are dying because of Putin. There is no reason for Zelensky to have any other reaction to Putin than a visceral disgust. And for all of us as well. You're going to be seeing a lot of messages that Zelensky is not a democratically elected leader and that we need a new leader. And to that, most of Ukrainians want to say the second you started attacking him, his support has grown exponentially. Because the thing is, we criticize our government, and we will and we should, because we are a democracy. And of course, there are things we want to be better, certain things, especially internal affairs. And Zelensky is not, he's not the strongest president when it comes to internal affairs and when it comes to handling the internal affairs, but he is where he should be during wartime, and we do support his actions, and we do support everything that he has done on the world stage so far, and how much he has stood up for us. So at the end of the day, what he did in the Oval Office is he stood up for us for the first time in our independence. He did not sign a shitty deal pressured onto us by Russia for the first time in our independence, and he did not bend over backwards and caved for the first time in our independence. We have a president who is not going to turn his back on us, because the way that he felt at that press conference is how we feel every day when we read all of these crazy narratives about us online. And also, since we are back to the press conference, I do want to address one moment. There have been so many videos flying around, and that's part of the Russian disinformation campaign that you're going to start seeing from American media and Trump administration, is that Zelensky called J.D. Vance suka, which means bitch. He didn't. Actually, if you would like to know, and I love that I am doing a Ukrainian/Russian curses lesson on air. But what he actually said is suka blять, and I'm sure that someone is going to have to beep this out. But that means, in translation, an expression of frustration, something like, oh, God damn it, or oh, for fuck's sake, or oh, anyways, literally any expression of being incredibly frustrated. So that's what happened. He was incredibly frustrated. And you, sure, as a world leader, maybe you should not have cursed, although it was under his breath and really it's picking at straws to try and make it viral. And he didn't say it out loud. You can't even, to be fair, you can't even say with 100% certainty that that's what he said because you're just reading lips, right? But sure, let's assume he did because it does look like he did. It's an expression of immense frustration. When you're in a room with two people that are berating you and attacking you and doing everything they can to piss you off and bait you, of course, at some point, you're going to get frustrated. And he did. And understandably so. I would have walked out of that room way earlier than he did, and he handled it with a lot of grace. If you watched the entire interview, not just snippets that made it to the media, you will see that he was actually very polite, very thankful. This whole conversation started with him thanking the United States, and then it just turned into a screaming match. And it's very unfortunate because that's basically what Russian propaganda does online to Ukrainians who fight against Russian propaganda. They bait and switch us, and they want us to seem like we are out of control and we are not grateful and we are not okay. And this is what's going to continue happening further and further. And, I think Zelensky handled himself perfectly, and I think that that White House meeting was a disaster, not for us, but for the United States, because they just revealed their true colors and their true face and showed that there is no diplomacy. There are just a bunch of buffoons and a bunch of egocentric, egotistic people sitting at that office, and all they want is praise, and all they want is submission. They don't care about what Europe thinks. They don't care about what Ukraine thinks. They just care about themselves, and they care about power and enforcing power. After that, the United States stopped all military aid to Ukraine, and after that, also, we found out that weeks prior, Pete Hegseth, who is the Defense Secretary of the United States, decided to stop all cyber attacks against Russia. So we're very clear in what's happening here, right? I also know from my own sources that not only are they stopping cyber attacks against Russia, the United States government decided not to rent very critical software that costs them $1 a year, a very symbolic amount that basically mirrors screens of Russian hackers and allows the United States see what Russian hackers are doing when they are attacking the government institutions. The reason why they're doing that is so our counterintelligence is unable to act back. So the United States is not protected. Tulsi Gabbard is now the director of the CIA, National Intelligence, and many spies are quitting because no one wants to work under a woman who is not even allowed to have a security clearance, who is known to have worked with Russia and the Taliban. So very dark times are ahead, and I know I'm being very pessimistic, but I want to give out this warning because I think it's important. When you see a ton of disinformation in the next couple of weeks or months, stand up to it. When you see your administration forcing peace, which is actually capitulation on Ukraine, stand up to it. When you see your government attacking and bullying another government and turning its back on your allies, stand up to it. Because the only time that Article 5 was triggered in NATO was actually the United States asking other countries to help it fight after 9/11 for the US national security. And all of them did. And they lost lots of lives in this pursuit. And no one has ever turned around and said, hey, pay us back or say thank you. Because that's what allies do. And the United States, in this press conference, in its actions recently, has turned its back on the countries that have never turned its back on the United States. And that's what I have for you for today. I'm sorry that it's quite a pessimistic one, but it is what it is. It's the state of the world, and I think that it's important to discuss it. What do you think? I actually want to know whether you thought Zelensky was wrong or whether you thought Trump was wrong or Vance was wrong. Give me your thoughts and ideas on what do you think is happening. Are you scared? Do you think that this shows the bigger picture? If we remove Ukraine out of the equation and just look at it as Trump talking to any other allied country's leader, what does that make you feel? That's all. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want to not miss the next one, subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications and give it a like, send it to a friend, send it to as many people as you can, send it to your MAGA grandma who probably saw this and is mortified and changing her beliefs a little too late. And leave your thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions down below. I promise to read all of them and I promise to address them in the next episode. See you next time.